Is one of the most basic principles of physics, one of Newton's laws. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And now, 1 month and 1 day into Donald Trump's second presidency, 1 month and 1 day since Donald Trump unleashed Elon Musk and his band of 20-something coders to gut the Justice Department and the FBI and the FAA and USAID and the Department of Homeland Security and the IRS and the VA and the Pentagon. 1 month and 1 day of Donald Trump terrifying and destabilizing our allies by cozying up to Vladimir Putin and insulting President Zelensky and claiming that he and Ukraine started the war. 1 month and 1 day of Donald Trump's administration deporting thousands of migrants, many of whom have no criminal record at all. 1 month and 1 day with no relief, none. Things going in the wrong direction on the question of inflation and the price of eggs. 1 month and 1 day of all that, we now have a better sense of what will oppose Donald Trump and his anti-democratic overreach, what Newton's law for every action and equal and opposite reaction might look like in our country and sounds like. Things like this.
Will you make sure hungry kids get fed and 5-year-olds aren't picking berries? Or are you going to...
I take education very seriously. I think AI can be transformative.
What are school lunches?
Why is this being jammed down the pipe so rushed and sloppily?
So,
Use a scalpel.
my understanding is when you say you have this many employees that you have to cut, that organization decides who they're going to cut. Now, they may make...
It's clear from all the writings of our founding fathers that our great republic was never meant to be ruled by a dictator nor a king.
A room full of ordinary voters who gathered at a town hall in Georgia last night to hear Republican Congressman Rich McCormick. And he's the one who got an earful from his constituents. He was greeted by boos and catcalls as hundreds of critics jeered his backing of President Donald Trump's agenda during his first month in office. Then there was this. A little bit ago, inside the White House State Dining Room, the Democratic governor of Maine refusing to back down when Donald Trump sought to bully and threaten her publicly over enforcing his administration's restrictions on transgender rights.
The NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine?
Yeah, I'm here.
Are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal law.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good, I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
I will see you in court. But the most comprehensive and eloquent rebuke of Donald Trump's first month came from Illinois' Governor J.B. Pritzker.
We don't have kings in America, and I don't intend to bend the knee to one. If you think I'm overreacting and sounding the alarm too soon, consider this. It took the Nazis 1 month, 3 weeks, 2 days, 8 hours, and 40 minutes to dismantle a constitutional republic. And all I'm saying is that when the 5-alarm fire starts to burn, every good person better be ready to man a post with a bucket of water if you want to stop it from raging out of control. Tyranny requires your fear and your silence and your compliance. Democracy requires your courage. So gather your justice and humanity, Illinois, and do not let the tragic spirit of despair overcome us when our country needs us the most. Thank you.
Tyranny requires your fear and your silence and your compliance. Democracy requires your courage. That is where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporter Greg Bluestein is back with us. He was at that town hall we showed you first. Also joining us, former RNC spokesman and host of the Bulwark podcast, Tim Miller's here. Puck News senior political columnist John Heilman is back. And with me at the table for the hour, host of MSNBC's Politics Nation, the president of the National Action Network, the Reverend Al Sharpton is here. Rev, I start with you because you know more than all of us combined about activism and about opposition and about holding elected officials' feet to the fire. That was just from the last 48 hours. What do you think?
I think we're seeing a rise in activism. We're seeing a groundswell of people that are saying, wait a minute, this is either not what I voted for, because some of these people are Trump supporters. The town hall with the congressman was not a blue district. And then others are saying that our worst fears have come alive. And when you start seeing thousands of people all over the country marching about the federal layoffs, and you see the town hall meetings, you're beginning to remember that what a lot of people forgot. When he went in 2016 and said he was going to end the Affordable Care Act and end Obamacare, it was this same organic rise up that we saw people at town hall meetings of their congressmen or congresswomen. People started rallying, people started marching, and it went all the way through. Then when George Floyd happened, all of us was out there. We're beginning to see the same kind of reaction to Donald Trump in his second term, and we're only in the third week.
Yeah. Tim Miller, the Bulwark has a great piece with a federal worker who voted for Donald Trump because he wanted his business acumen. And he's one of the federal workers who has been fired. And I think what's important about the piece is, and what's important about Rev's point about the town hall, is we speak with such despair as though the information silos are made of concrete and nothing gets through, one side or the other. That's been disproven in the last month. The things that Trump has done are abundantly clear to people who voted for him. And I wonder what you think of this moment.
It has. Well, I'm encouraged in this moment that some slumbering bears seem to have been awoken in the elected Democratic class, which is good, but also among people, and I think that it was rational and sensible for people to be disheartened after the election. I was disheartened. If this wasn't my job, I probably would have taken a month off too, and so I understand that. But eventually over time, we all knew, those of us who have watched Donald Trump closely, who are aware of his many bankruptcies and the fact that he left his first term, with the economy in tatters and, poop smeared on the Capitol, that he was going to have a similar result this time. And it was just going to be a matter of what and how. And we really are already seeing some of that. It is easy to demonize bureaucrats broadly. It is true that the federal government could be more efficient. But what is also true is that when you bring in somebody who has no expertise on this, who seems completely addled, who's wearing sunglasses and carrying a chainsaw at a conservative rally yesterday, and just have him willy-nilly fire a bunch of people, fire veterans, fire Trump supporters, fire people that contribute to their community without any review or any care about what happens to them, well, there's going to be negative political ramifications about that. Propaganda, the Fox propaganda machine and the other MAGA propaganda machines can't make people not feel what is really happening. And so I do think that, eventually over time, this stuff is going to continue to build as these guys continue to fail and flail, and they will.
Greg Bluestein, you were in the room. Tell us about this gathering of constituents and what they had to say to a Republican member of Congress.
Yeah, something that Rev said really struck me because it really did remind me of covering those Tea Party movement gatherings, those protests at town hall meetings 15 or so years ago. This, though, felt very organic. To my knowledge, there was not some big national effort behind this. Local parties and really local citizens were bubbling up from the grassroots level to go to this event. And hundreds were there. Many were there waiting outside and weren't even let in. It was cold. And so many of them kind of went home. But others were stuffed into overflow rooms. And there was a huge crowd in the actual room where the congressman was there, was delivering his remarks. And the pushback was real. I mean, this is the first time in Georgia since Trump's election where I've seen this amount of pushback in public There's been protests, there's been movements, but nothing like this before. And it reminds me too that, after Trump's election, a number of Georgia Democratic leaders said, look, we're in wait and see mode. We're going to wait and see what happens. It seems like the time to wait and see is long past right now, a month into Trump's term. So Democrats are really starting to push back.
And these, just to be clear, I mean, this looked like people who were disappointed that they had sent him there. I mean, this crowd seemed to at least represent themselves in their statements as, at least some of them voting for Donald Trump and the Republican congressman. Is that a fair read of what we heard?
Yeah, and look, some were Republicans, some were Democrats. This was sort of the tail end, the southern end of Congressman McCormick's district. He is not a MAGA warrior per se. He's not Marjorie Taylor Greene. He supported the president, and he's behind him, right now 100%. But originally, he supported Ron DeSantis, his presidential campaign. So he was maybe the most prominent Republican in Georgia, other than maybe Governor Kemp and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, not to support Donald Trump. Early on in his campaign. But at the same time, these were voters who were saying, hey, look, even though you say you're this independent maverick character, show it. And, and he's had a string of controversial and contentious statements that they wanted to hold him to account.